Hey guys, Scott with Football Scoop. This weekend I had the opportunity to visit with Walker Jones. Walker's been an agent with CAA, which is Jimmy Sexton, Trace Armstrong, those guys. Walker joined them, I think, January of 14, so he's been there just over a year. Former executive with Under Armour, played football at Ole Miss, really a well-connected guy. When I put out the call on Twitter, I said, hey, I'm going to visit some agents for Football Scoop Radio this week. One of his clients called me and goes, Walker has been outstanding for the last year. He'd be a great guy to have on there. And he was. It was a great listen. On Football Scoop Radio, we only had time for about half of his interview. So this is the full thing. And what you're going to hear is a guy who's just passionate about helping his clients. Obviously, when you work with Jimmy Sexton and Trace Armstrong, those guys have the ability to open a lot of doors. And but what you're going to hear from Walker is the same thing you hear from a lot of guys. It's the same thing I tell coaches all the time. It's about relationships. You got to develop your network, be able to get in the door when you need to get in the door. But again, your relationships are going to get you there. You got to win the job as a coach. But this is a great listen. Have a listen to what Walker Jones with CAA had to say.
All right, guys, welcome back to Football Scoop. Very excited now to have Walker Jones on with us. Walker, how are you, friend?
Doing good, bud. How are you?
Doing great. So for those of you who don't know Walker joined up with CAA on the coaching side. CAA is, the names are Jimmy Sexton, Trace Armstrong, two of the best in the business. Walker left Under Armour, where he had been for a long time, was running college sports marketing for them about a year ago. And so he's been football coach's agent for about a year. How's that going, Walker?
Yeah, it's been really exciting. Everything has kind of turned out how I anticipated. Being able to join in with a group like Jimmy and Trace, who were really pioneers in the coaching, representation business, and then CAA, which has such a great name just in sports and entertainment. It was just a great opportunity to join up with a first-class group that had a tremendous reputation. And I've always been fascinated by the coaching profession, and it was just everything kind of added up, and it's been it's met every expectation that I've had.
All right, so let's say you're on a flight, you sit next to just some guy, and he says, okay, so you're an agent. What does that mean? What do you do throughout the year? Give me the elevator pitch. What do you guys do for your clients?
Yeah, I think we wear a lot of hats, and we play a lot of roles for our clients. Some of the more obvious things are, contract negotiation and working through whether it be renewals, terminations, et cetera. And then, positioning clients for possible jobs, providing, guidance and, education, throughout the year. And really, whatever role we play, it all comes back to really a personal relationship with these guys. And, sometimes you play the role of the devil's advocate. Sometimes you play the role of a positive reinforcer. Sometimes you're the guy they call on the bus after getting beat that they want to just vent to. And so you really got to kind of, know your clients from a relationship standpoint, their personalities. Every guy's a little different. And you just try to fill those needs and add value where you can. But, it's a fascinating profession in the fact that there's a lot of ways outside of those obvious things I mentioned to add value to these guys, where it be, interview preparation, putting them through mock interviews, doing research, providing, analysis for them, whether it be from a salary and compensation standpoint to trends out there with coaching contracts to being able to be proactive before jobs open and positioning our clients when those jobs do come open and getting them in front of the decision makers and the right people. And then, also too, marketing our coaches. Coaches and people in general are poor self-promoters, and not a lot of people want to be a self-promoter, so we can kind of fill that need for these guys because they're so busy, as you know, Scott, doing their day job that they don't have a lot of time to be proactive and to go out and sell themselves and their reputation, and I think that's where we can add a lot of value.
So I'm fascinated by the positioning talk. So is this we're reaching out to, for head coaches, we're reaching out to athletic directors and search committees and educating them on the positives associated with your guys? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, and again, I'll go back to my answer about why I wanted to join up with Trace and Jimmy and CAA. I mean, people will answer our phone calls because of the reputation that those guys have built and because of the reputation of CAA. So, people are interested. They respect our opinion and our insight and our analysis, and it really validates the coaches we represent. So, we're able to get the right people on the phone and again, market these coaches that we represent to, whether it be a search firm or whether it be an athletic director, an assistant athletic director at the NFL level, GMs and front office personnel. And so, really, we that's the role we try to play. Now, we also try to make sure people understand expectations. We don't go out and get people jobs. That's not our job. Our job is to educate our clients, to prepare our clients, to market our clients, get them in front of the right people, the decision makers, give them great guidance and counsel when these opportunities arrive to see if it's a proper fit for them, both personally and professionally. But at the end of the day, after all that happens, it's on the coach to get the job. They're going to hire the coach because of his reputation, not his representation. But we can certainly help get them to that point by the value that we add.
So the actual, coach gets invited to interview for a big job. How involved or present are you guys at the interview?
Well, one thing Jimmy told me right when I started is, we take a back seat. This is not about us. You rarely see, us quoted or in articles. We try to stay behind the scenes and support our clients, in a way where we don't draw attention to ourselves. But we're very active behind the scenes. We don't sit in on interviews. We're strictly there to, sit with our coaches, prepare them, whether it be doing mock interviews, coming up with questions, doing a Q&A, providing, roster analysis, facility analysis, budgeting, scheduling, all those things that go into a coach considering an opportunity. We try to provide that guidance and that information. So when the coach walks into that room, he's 100% confident of what he's about to talk about and the people he's about to talk to. I mean, that's the other thing, too. I think if you looked at most universities or NFL teams out there between myself, Jimmy, and Trace, or someone else at CAA, we probably have a great relationship or have dealt with that university or team in some capacity before. So we have a great familiarity with the people that'll be in the room, and their personalities, what they're looking for, what they've done in the past, so we can educate the coach on, here's the four guys that are going to be in the room, here's what each role each one of them is going to play, here's the things you need to recognize with each one of them. So I think that gives great value, too. Outside of just the knowledge, just the interaction with an AD, associate AD, a school president, a GM, et cetera, we've got such great bandwidth with our group that we've probably dealt with them in the past.
So, Walker, are there some things that you find generally coaches want you guys to advocate for them on in regards to negotiation? I mean, everybody wants to be paid a fair wage, but what else other than just pure compensation are coaches, asking guys, make sure we get this in the contract? Is there anything like that?
Well, yeah, I think the two things we try to do are flexibility with security, which are tough to achieve in a profession that doesn't offer up a lot of either one. There's not a ton of flexibility, and there's definitely not a ton of security. No. So what we try to do is try to find that happy medium where we can provide not only a very competitive wage, but also security in the length of the contract, the termination provisions, the buyout provisions, et cetera, and then the flexibility. If somebody does come calling for a better opportunity down the road prior to your contract expiring, what is your ability to be able to get out of that current contract? How prohibitive are they going to be in you going and seeking new opportunities? So again, I think that's really the trick is what we really try to focus on. Yeah, we're going to get you paid properly, but we're also going to let you take care of your family by giving you a level of security in a profession that doesn't offer a lot of security. But we're also going to try to maintain some flexibility so you can go out and achieve the goals you want to achieve.
As FootballScoop Radio, we're joined by Walker Jones, CAA, coach's agent on 104.5 ESPN. So, Walker, let's switch gears a little bit and talk a little bit about assistant coaches. So let's say we're in December. Head coach gets a job. How involved are you guys in advising perhaps one of your clients who just got a head coach job on how we should fill out a staff, who we should consider for those positions?
Well, again, I think each coach is a little different. Some coaches will say, hey, man, I need you guys to sit in here and help me interview these guys, help me put my staff together. Other head coaches may be like, hey, look, I got this. Just help me run some interference here, but I know pretty much what direction I'm going to go in. So you kind of find the happy medium of what your coach is looking for. If it's a first-time head coach, generally we play a much more integral role in helping him build his staff. If it's a veteran head coach, he's got a pretty good idea of what he's looking for in the makeup of his staff. But again, we just try to be flexible in there and try to fill that void. But whatever end of the spectrum you're on, there is a role for us to play in there. And a lot of times we have to be the one to reach out and contact these potential staff members because of their current contracts with other schools or other teams. So we can be the intermediary, so to speak, to make contact to those guys. So everything's above board. We can also be the one to do due diligence and background checks on these coaches if it's someone they're not familiar with. So we do play a role, and with some we play a very in-depth role in building their staff. And I think that's where I think we can, we take the emotion out of it. We can be kind of a third party and kind of a sounding board and provide really great guidance on, okay, this is what your staff looks like from a recruiting standpoint and from an on-field coaching standpoint. Now, what are we missing? What are the gaps? What are the holes we need to fill, and then who do we need to go out there to fill those holes? And I think, again, with our reach between Jimmy, Trace, and myself, we can really pretty much get to about anybody we need to get to try to fill one of those voids on the staff.
So you mentioned earlier security, and I know that's a big deal for coaches these days. So in the news, like literally, this week, Wisconsin, announces a bunch of their coaches' contracts, and they're all one-year deals for the assistants, other than the coordinators. In the SEC, you see a lot of 2-year deals for assistants. How do you attempt to get your guy a second year, an extra year, or extra 6 months even on a contract, so a contract doesn't end, December 31st or January 31st, which is so hard in this profession?
Well, I think this is, again, now this comes to where I think what's important about this is the relationship you have with that administration. And, one of the things that attracted me to this group was, Jimmy very own said, look, we're not a hired gun. We're going to go out, we're going to get great deals for our guys, but we're going to preserve their reputation and the relationship, and we're not going to sacrifice that for money. So in doing that, the ADs, the administrations, the presidents, et cetera, they will have a positive experience in negotiating with us. And so we'll have a great reputation with those guys. And anytime you have a great reputation and you understand and the other party understands you're not trying to shake them down, then I think you can generally get to a good place. And so I think that's a big part of it is a relationship side and trust, having trust, the AD trusting us trusting the AD, that we're going to work this thing out. So I think that's the first thing. You got to get past that. Then once you get past that, you just really have to do your research and look at what the trends are out there, Scott, what's going on in the college world across all the conferences, and then break them down on your Power 5 conferences and then your individual conferences. The SEC may be different than what the Pac-12 is doing from a contractual standpoint, and so you got to know your research, you got to know the data, and you got to be able to articulate that to the administration when you're trying to achieve a level of security for your assistants. And one thing, one of the trends we see out there, Scott, is a lot of these schools are trying to tie the buyout provisions to the sitting head coach. So therefore, the buyout is tied to whether that coach is still the head coach or not. And that's a tough thing for an assistant coach. So if that coach were to leave and not take him with him, then, technically the provisions of that buyout and that contract are null and void. And that's a tough thing, and I understand why some schools want to do it, but we really try to hold off that and try to avoid that at all costs. But that's certainly a trend that we're seeing, which has not been advantageous to, assistant coaches, in most cases. But again, I understand the logic behind it, but our job is to try to mitigate that as much as we can. And then there's a level of horse trading that goes on. You know, we'll sacrifice a little bit of this to get this back, and we'll give up a little salary on the front end to get more security on the back end. So again, you got to just, and that comes with, again, knowing who you're talking to and knowing what are the hot button issues, you know, and where to give them a win and where to push and where not to push.
So, Walker, in speaking with coaches all the time, especially guys, you know, who might be late 20s, early 30s, upwardly mobile, but still kind of that first level, second level in the profession, they're saying, hey, Scott, at what point do I need an agent? At what point do I need representation? And I often say, hey, you know, reach out to a couple agents and ask them that question. Ask them what they can provide, you know, just in terms of guidance to you. You know, how do you guys answer that question?
Well, look, I think each situation, as you well know, is different. To me, there's really not a bad time to investigate the process of having representation. I think, look, you know, what I always tell coaches, look, as many hours as they spend, as important as their profession is to their livelihood, why would you not want to try to maximize your opportunity and get every possible advantage you can have to achieve the goals you want to achieve to? And part of that is having representation at some point throughout your career path. And really the only downside, you know, to having representation is if you just pick the wrong guys. You know, they're not a cultural fit, there's not a relationship fit there. But other than that, especially for a young coach, there's not much financial risk. And all you're really doing is getting somebody to give you some guidance and, again, get your name out there in the proper circles and tie you to that coach. So it's a two-way street. But again, having representation, we structure it. There's really not a ton of downside, real funny, and maybe fast-track it a couple years. And look, can a coach achieve all his goals without representation? Of course he could. You know, we're not miracle workers, you know, and the coaches, you know, if they're great coaches, people are going to notice that, and they could probably accomplish a lot of what they want to do without representation. However, when you look at the complexity of these contracts now, the nature of the business, the dollars that are being poured into college football, you know, it just gives you another layer of security, you know, and flexibility and guidance, you know, in a world that's getting much more complex and short-sighted. I mean, you know, you don't have a lot of years to go out. Your windows open and close very fast. These coaches' opportunities for their windows, you know, can open and close and them not even know it. So that's what we try to tell guys too is, look, you don't want to miss your window, and you want to know when that window is because it may not come back around for a while. And I think that's where we can help those guys understand, hey, this is your windows. This is the time we need to look at some other opportunities. And I think that's an area for a young coach where we can give them great guidance.
Walker, if you were going to estimate it, what percentage of Power 5 conference coordinators now have representation?
Oh, geez. I would say it's definitely north of 90%, I would think. I mean, I mean, I'm sure there's a few out there who don't. I'm sure there's some guys that either haven't, you know, don't believe in it or just haven't done it for whatever reason. Yeah, of course, are there some guys that don't have it? Sure, but off the top of my head, I can't think of many. So I would think the vast majority of coordinators have representation for the very reasons we've talked about.
And what about, you know, and I'd be very interested to know, I know you weren't doing it 5 years ago or 10 years ago, but 5 years ago, 10 years ago is probably a different answer because the economics involved have risen, you know, with TV money and things like that. You know, the stakes have risen and the risk has risen and the dollars involved have risen. So I would think that has increased pretty dramatically over the last 10 years. Wouldn't you think?
Oh, I mean, absolutely. I mean, you saw Dan Mullen. You know, I'll use the SEC West example. I mean, every coach in that division is making over $4 million now. And 5, 6, 7 years ago, Nick Saban was the only one. Yeah. You know, and it just that's just a microcosm of how the coaching salaries have increased along with the TV networks, the conference networks, you know, et cetera. So, you know, the playoff system, you know, that's changed the whole landscape as well. So I don't know what the exact percentage is. I just know that, you know, a coaching contract, you know, 5 years ago, 6 years ago was maybe, you know, a term sheet or 2 or 3 page term sheet. Now we're doing assistant coaching contracts that are 20, 25 pages long. So that goes to show you just the level of complexity that has come into play with these contracts, along with the dollar figure going up. I mean, these universities want to be protected as well, and they've got a lot to risk financially if things don't go right. So, again, I think those are the things that again have quite frankly helped our side of the business, because I think people realize the need to have an outside party, help them wade through all this. Because another thing too, Scott, these universities are getting incredibly more proactive and aggressive in renewing and restructuring contracts and trying to retain their own coaches.
Mm-hmm. I think the most important thing you touched on is the personal relationships across the board with the coaches is important, but also with the administration and being able to smooth things out. For example, you have this. It's early December, new head coach gets hired, and he wants to fill out his staff right away because they want to get on the road recruiting. Well, it's almost impossible to work out a contract right away, but he wants that assistant there then and now. I presume you guys put a term sheet in place with the, good faith acknowledgement y'all will get it done in the next 30 to 60s or something like that, fully documented. And it's on you guys to get it done. And I'm sure that comes up a lot.
Yeah. Well, it does. And again, to your point, everything, regardless of what role we play, it all comes down to a personal relationship with our coaches. And that relationship's built on trust. It's built on transparency, integrity, honesty, all those things. Because, look, it's not always going to be good news. Unfortunately, we have to deal with guys that get fired every year, or guys that are up for jobs that don't get them, guys that are out of work trying to find jobs. I mean, there's some tough conversations you got to have, and it's not always fun. But as long as you're transparent with them, you're honest with them, they trust you, you trust them, then if we do that at the end of the day, we've probably done a pretty good job for our guys. And so I think that's really the hallmark of what we do is we're not the smartest guys in the room. I mean, but I think what we are is we're good guys. I think people trust us. They respect us. And if you have that, then you got a chance. You always got a chance, because then you can pick the phone up. People are going to take your phone call. They're going to listen to what you have to say. They're going to respect your opinion, and that just helps our coaches get into a better situation. So, I think that's really where this thing ends and begins with us, is that relationship built on those pillars that I talked about.
Walker Jones, I appreciate you taking time to join us on Football Scoop. It's a pleasure, my friend. Thank you.
Scott, I appreciate it, man. Have a good one. Thanks for talking.
That's Walker Jones with CAA out of Memphis, housed up there with Jimmy Sexton. It's a very good group. Obviously for the highest level coaches, they're a great group to represent you. You heard things there: career management, it's relationships, it's can we get you in. I liked everything we heard there. It's good advice for coaches. Thanks for joining us on Football Scoop.